Welcome to Beyond the Game More Stories, the podcast where we explore the lessons sports teach us about life, leadership, adversity, and just overall growth long after the final whistle. I'm your host, Dwayne Lightfoot Jr. On this show, we sit down with athletes, coaches, parents, and just leaders just to have real conversations about the moments that shape us, the different challenges we go through, the victories, big and small, the setbacks, and the experiences that just stay with us long after the scoreboard goes dark. All right, so let's jump into today's episode of Beyond the Game More Stories. Today's guest is someone I'm very excited to talk with today. So today's guest gives us that rare opportunity to do something that we don't do very often. So think about names like James Naismith, Alexander Cartwright, James Creighton, Ebenezer Cobb Morley, and Walter Camp. It's not every day that you get the chance to sit down with someone who imagined a sport and then watched it become a worldwide phenomenon. So today's guest, he's considered kind of a visionary. He's currently the president of Mandalay Sports Media, where he has helped bring some of the most compelling sports stories ever told to the screen. His works include award-winning projects like The Last Dance, The Captain, The Redeem Team, and Shaun White's The Last Run. But beyond telling the stories of great athletes, he's also helped create opportunities for athletes to live out their dreams. Because from an idea, just a vision, and ultimately a belief in something new, he helped create a sport that athletes around the world now play professionally. He is the creator and co-founder of SlamBall. So please help me welcome to Beyond the Game More Stories, Mason Gordon. Good afternoon, Mason. How are we doing today?
Lightfoot, it's so great to see you, man. I've been excited about doing this for a long time. I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I'm so glad you're doing this format and you're talking to people about the things that really drive and motivate them in sports and how to keep that joy in their sports journey and their sports endeavor. I do have to fact check you really quick off the top. I was president of Mandalay Sports Media, and I've since moved on to do SlamBall full time. But
Okay.
great story there. The last show that I set up at MSM before I left to move to Las Vegas to relaunch SlamBall as a live bettable league on ESPN, by the way. And the last show that I set up is called Born to Bowl, and it's a drive to survive of professional bowlers, and it's every bit as like heartbreaking and emotional and quirky and funny as that sounds. And that show just came out on HBO just this week. So if you're looking for a fun show to watch, to get invested in the next few weeks, Born to Bowl is a really good one. A24 and Ben Stiller are producing that alongside Mike Tolan and those guys. And I actually have a co-EP credit on that. So kind of cool.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I apologize for the mix-up, but I definitely will check it out. And I'll make sure, because if it's like anything else that you've worked on from, again, Last Dance, amazing. It gets my childhood just really touched me there. But between that, SlamBall, everything, I haven't had I can't say a negative thing about anything I've ever seen you put your hands on, man. So I will definitely check it out. I'll put it into my HBO queue. So we'll make sure that we get that out there as well.
That's awesome.
So, all right. So now here, kind of before we get started, I feel like I owe the audience a full disclosure. A lot of people know that, I had the opportunity to play SlamBall back in 2008. And even though, we're sitting here around March Madness time right now, a lot of people, that have kind of heard my journey care more about the SlamBall aspect of it than the fact that I played Division I basketball. So Just kind of think about it again. We've met each other in officially in 2008, but I want to take it back to the very beginning, So, and this is a story that I've never shared with you, so I want to share it with you now. So,
Mm.
let me take you back. It all actually started in 1992. All right, I'm walking through. We have what's called a Kroger grocery store in Louisville, Kentucky, with my mom. And we're just walking toward the checkout, and this magazine just happens to grab my attention. Now, on the cover, it featured this huge, what looked like a bodybuilder, larger than life athlete, with his hands over his head, fireworks in the background, and he's raising two belts over his head. Pink cover, like I will never forget it. That magazine was the WWF magazine that followed WrestleMania 6, and it was the Ultimate Warrior on the cover. And from that moment, I became a wrestling fan. So since that faithful day in Kroger, I watch wrestling every Monday night, right? So I know you're wondering, what does this have to do with how we met? So you fast forward that to my sophomore year. I'm sitting in my college dorm room. Again, it's Monday night, so I'm watching wrestling. And as the end of wrestling, when it goes off, for some reason, I kind of hung on a little bit longer before I turned the channel. Probably because like the way my room was set up, the 18-inch TV back in 2002 was like all the way across the room, and I just didn't feel like getting up. But all of a sudden, the wrestling goes off, and all of a sudden, I see this guy just jump off a spring bed trampoline, and just dunk a basketball over top of another player. And again, this is 2002, so it's not like, from my perspective, I don't like watching commercials or anything back then, so I didn't know a lot of like build up or coming soon or anything. But in that moment, what I saw was SlamBall. And I see it, and I'll never forget it. It was Stan Shakes Fletcher was playing, and I'm watching the game go, and all of a sudden, I'm hooked. I watched every single play for the next hour.
Oh.
And I'm sure this was something that was by design. At the end of the hour, there was an advertisement. It said, like, if you're interested in slam ball, call this number. And just like anybody else would do at that time, I took a post-it note, I wrote that phone number down, and I put it on my desk. And now I want you to understand, I'm a sophomore in college. I still have 3 years of eligibility of basketball, right? They're paying for my education. So I can't just like hop off and just do anything. So that post-it note basically sat on my desk for 3 years through two moves. I kept that post-it note. All right. So now again, I'm finally go through my last few years, and here it is. My eligibility is gone, and I sit there and I pick up the phone, and I'm like, hey, I've had this note sitting here. I want to make this phone call. So I called you, and I know this is a long story, but I called the number. And again, I'm not expecting anybody to answer. I'm expecting it to be an answer machine pickup. I'm gonna leave a message, and nobody's ever gonna call me back. Cause back then, you think about it, with my basketball background, I'm like, I can't just call the Chicago Bulls and be like, hey, draft me, right? So so I called the number, the phone rings about 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden a silence hit. And then on the other end, I heard hello. So I said, "Hey," because again, I'm in shock 'cause I wasn't expecting anybody to answer. So I sit there and say, "Hey, my name is Dwayne Lightfoot. I'm a former college basketball player, and I want to say, and I want to play a slam ball." So the voice on the other end of the phone, it says, "Hey, tell me a little bit about yourself." So we talked for a few minutes, and then at the end of the conversation, don't be mad at me. I realized I forgot the name the person I was talking to. So I asked again. I said, "Okay, yeah, hey, I appreciate it. My name is Dwayne Lightfoot. Again, what was your name?" And the voice on the other end of the phone said Mason Gordon. Now, again, I've watched Slam, but I've watched it every game. Spike TV, I watched it all of the time, and all of a sudden the name hit me, and I'm like, "Wait, did you say Mason Gordon? Are you like the Mason Gordon that created Slam Ball, that played for the Diablos?" And in
Yeah.
that moment, the voice on the other end said yes. And I was like, okay, so this is like real. So I said, okay, again, my name is Dwayne Lightfoot. And from that moment forward, I made sure that you never forgot who I was because I wanted to play slam ball. So I made sure randomly I would just check in on you and everything, just see how everything was going, see if there was any update or anything. But that was, the beginning of how I met Mason Gordon and how I began to have a slam ball career. So, again, from the jump, I appreciate you for doing this, and I appreciate you for picking up the phone that day because I never would have had the opportunity to do that if you didn't pick up the phone that day.
Well, Dwayne, I really appreciate that. And I remember it very vividly. I want you to know that I spoke to hundreds and hundreds of people who called that number. It wasn't always me picking up the phone, but in the end, we had thousands of people like dialing in, trying to leaving messages, getting referred to the email and all that kind of stuff. But your call always stood out to me, and the what was absolutely fascinating, and I don't want to mess up your format here, but I just want to tell people, maybe tease the rest of the show,
Mhm.
like you went on like the record on a national sports service that was interviewing you at the end of your career. It was your last game at Butler, and people asked what you wanted to do, and you said, "I think I want to. I think I'm going to play professional slam ball." And that blurb like got surfaced to us, obviously, from interns and stuff that were working with us, because we had kind of a skeleton crew back then. And that was like a really important moment in the history of the sport, because somebody that was playing at a really reputable college program that was putting up real numbers and, could go and play overseas and had professional options, had slam ball at the top of his board. So you were always a really big needle mover for slam ball. And then once we got you into slam ball training camp, ooh, that's a story I want to tell. Like that's what I want to tell your audience, because I know you're such a humble, like self-deprecating guy. People don't understand. You are the biggest what if in the history of the sport, and the sport is been around since 2002 as a nationally broadcast, nationally televised sport. And you are one of the most amazing talents that we've ever had on the slam ball floor.
Well, Mason, I really appreciate that. I've from that moment when we did that drill and I rolled my ankle, I honestly felt like I was letting you down, because again, you stuck with me from 4 or 5 years of just random phone calls and emails and everything, and that was one of the hardest injuries I ever had my entire life. Not just of a playing career, but like I felt like I was letting you down. I felt like I was letting my teammates down, my coaches down, and we had actually sat there a couple days before, and you were like, when it clicks, it's gonna click. And I felt like that week it actually clicked for me, and I overcame, which I'll get into. I overcame some of my fears that I had
Yeah.
with it. But man, I tell you, I just I'm eternally grateful for the opportunity that you gave me just to at least come out there and try out. So
Yeah, man, you deserve so much more, and you never let me down. That's not even remotely the case. I was absolutely devastated for you and for the relationship that we built over several years to get you onto the slam ball court and get you this opportunity. And I'm just gonna tell people, like, you showed up like some of the best basketball players that have ever showed up in slam ball. There's another guy named Jelani Janice, who
mhm.
some people say is the best slam ball player of all time. Given that I have literally been hit so hard by Jelani Janice that my soul has left my body for a moment, like I can tell you that Jelani is definitely like the top one or two players that have ever played slam ball. And he's like, he played at Kansas. He's, a really celebrated athlete. And he comes to slam ball like a lot of the high end basketball players do, and they are not effective out of the gate. They have spent an entire athletic lifetime up until that point developing an apex confidence level around being this high off the ground. And now we're asking them to be this high off the ground. And
Yeah.
it's a huge adjustment, because you're actually geographically leaving your confidence zone and you're
Mhm.
going somewhere else. And some people can go there and some people can't. And football players in our training camps typically get there faster because they already know that when they fall, when they fall on a football field, when they're going for an interception or something like that, they know not to put their hands down. They know how to land and roll. And that is kind of the advantage that football players have. So when you came to training camp, we had put so much work into like getting you there, and you were struggling at the outset, and it was hard for you to make it work. You were a solid player, but but you couldn't like put it together to where you could do what I knew you could do. And then one day, and you were talking to me about it, and we were working it, and we were working it, and I knew it was going to come online for you. And that's when what you were talking about it clicking. And one day, because I went to all the practices. I mean, I think people would see like I was there from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. It was just insane, but that was like the level of my commitment that I wanted to experience it all and help people where I could. And then one day you went from being competent to absolutely dominant. And there were two guys on your team, you and James Lee, and you, both of you, were completely unstoppable from the defensive perspective. They couldn't do anything with you. And you actually, and both you and James Lee played big time college basketball. He was a real standout at the University of San Francisco. He's 6'6" like you. I think he was a little heavier than you. I think he was like
Yeah.
240 or something like that. But the two of you together would have been absolutely the most dominant thing. And but literally, uh, Dion Mays, who was the greatest defensive player that we ever saw, came to me and he goes, "You can't let them play. It's not fair. You can't let Lee and Lightfoot play. It's like I can't stop them. I don't even know how to stop them." So I want you to know in your heart of hearts that because that ankle injury, it shouldn't have derailed you. It was just the worst possible timing for an ankle injury that was going to take some time to heal because of the
Yeah.
way that you rolled your ankle. So, if it would have happened at a different time in the training camp, you would have ridden it out and been able to play and been able to be dominant. But it's the biggest what if in my mind, in the history of the sport, if you would have had an entire run during Series 3. And I think you would have been the guy. I think there's a very, very real chance that would have happened.
Yeah, well, no, I definitely appreciate those kind words. I don't necessarily know that I deserve them all, but I appreciate it. I always at that point in time, as we look back at that '08 Bouncers team, I was like, man, if Slam Ball could have been 5-on-5, and if you have me, Dion, and Chris, and, you give all three of us, because if we have Chris on the floor with the two of us, we got to sit Josh.
Yeah.
Or we just don't play with a stopper, which I don't recommend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, but again, I appreciate that. So all right, so as we kind of get in here, I want to dive into everything. But
Mhm.
before we kind of get into all the different accomplishments, the highlights that everybody's seen for you and Slam Ball, just stuff that, surface level stuff, I always like to start at the kind of the beginning of it, right? Because again, my podcast, I want to focus on, the person, not just the athlete and the life lessons that they have gone through and everything. So just kind of setting the table for everybody listening, the origin of Slam Ball, everybody's heard the story, beginning in the warehouse with all the leftover parts and everything, the napkin, but is incredible and very well known. But as we all know, great inventions often don't come at the very beginning. After many attempts is a lot of times when you actually see that success. So can you tell me, before you created this version of what slam ball looks like now, what were some of the other ideas or sports or concepts that you had thought of at the time?
There wasn't any. It was just this particular thing. And I grew up doing three things. I played basketball, I played football, and I played video games. And if you squint a little bit, you can see how those three things would come together to form slam
Mhm.
ball. And I love the physicality of football, but you play for 6 seconds and then you stand around for a whole minute. Like I never understood the tempo. And then I love the fluidity and the athleticism of basketball, but these guys, like, they get slapped on the wrist and they start crying to the refs for a foul. So I always thought there was like white space between the basketball and football, like sports and cultures and communities. And I was like, there's got to be something that brings these things together. And so the UFC came around, right? And the UFC, most people saw cage fighting, but like I saw an algorithm. If people can take the best elements of taekwondo, jujitsu, boxing, wrestling, and mix them together into something that young people love. I'm not a martial artist, I'm a team sports guy. So can I take the best elements of basketball, football, hockey, and trampolines, because I played way too much NBA Jam growing up, and can I make something that's like nonstop, hard hitting, high flying, super creative, and fun? Like that was the big thing. I wanted this to be fun. So I didn't have another sports idea. This was the thing, and I was just crazy laser focused on it. But I will tell you, there was a point when we were in the warehouse in East LA, and I built this court, and it was a full court, and it kind of worked, and it was a little bit janky, and the court would continue to evolve, but all the pieces were there to be able to like put this together. And I had recruited basketball and football players to learn and play the same sport together. And in my head, this 6 weeks earlier, Lightfoot, I'm like sketching this out on a napkin. And then I'm in this warehouse, and then I've got all these guys that I have to train, and I have to teach them how to do this stuff. And in my head, it's like the basketball guys and the football guys are just going to come together like this. And it's just going to be exactly what it is in my head. But what I found out is that the football guys hit the basketball guys, and the basketball guys want to fight. And so I'm busting up fights like every 60 seconds. And I can't teach any of these guys how to do anything because they're fighting all the time, right? So there's this one guy that everybody has a problem with. His name's Jeff, and he's from Chicago, and he's a football player. So he's diving all over the floor. He's pancaking people into the walls. He's doing everything that he's supposed to be doing, and everybody has a problem with him. So James Willis, who was my best friend, when we made SlamBall, and was a lot of the reason I made the sport was so that he'd have like this opportunity to play. And he got in a fight with Jeff, and I was like, oh God, my like the guy who's supposed to be supporting me and helping me is like fighting with this guy. Like I can't win. So I went to Jeff and I go, Jeff, well, first I flipped out and I yelled at everybody. And I said, "This is high school football tough. If you can't be high school football tough, you shouldn't get paid to play anything." Right? And I got it all on camera. It's gonna make a really good like piece of the documentary one day. And I said, "We're all gonna go to lunch, and then when we come back, we're gonna fix this, or I'm gonna shut it all down." And and I pulled Jeff aside and I said, Jeff, when we come back from lunch, I'm going to check myself into the game. Because at that point, I'd never even thought about that. And I said, I want you to hit me harder than you've hit anybody in your whole life and make sure everybody sees it. Can you do that, Jeff? And Jeff goes, I've been wanting to hit you since you opened your stupid mouth. So so we come back from lunch. Everybody, the morale is like awful. Everybody's kind of down. And I remember I'm in the game, and everybody's like, "Why the hell is he in the game? Like this is so stupid." And so I remember I was catching the ball, and I turned, and Jeff came from about 25 feet away and absolutely decleated me, like just caught me right in the torso. I came up off the ground. Got slammed into the ground. I broke 3 ribs, but I got up and I kept playing. I kept playing. And then and then all the guys there in that one moment, all the basketball guys were like, well, if he can get hit like that and keep playing, I can be a little bit tougher. And so that was kind of how I made the oil and water like mix. And then as soon as that happened, it was like the whole thing took off. And it was everything I thought it would be when I mapped it out, on a napkin and in my head. And true to form, we managed to get a crowd in there, and people would come in off the street and bring back friends, and it was really crazy. And then we got a national television deal right there in the warehouse about 5 days after that.
Yeah, and that's something that I tell people is, you can see it on TV, but when you see it in person, it's totally different, man. And
Oh
and
yeah,
I can understand how it just spreads. Like one person sees it, it's the game of telephone. One person sees it, they tell somebody. The message may get distorted. It may be called something differently by the time the 10th person comes in, but you got
yeah,
10 people in there now, and they're watching it.
yeah.
So just kind of seeing that, again, I never knew that you weren't planning on playing,
No,
because I
I,
know my season you weren't planning on playing, and you had to replace me when I got hurt. But
yeah.
I had always thought that, hey, you dreamed of this for you. Like this is
That
what
is
I yeah,
that is how I got on the bouncers. I forgot about
yeah,
that. Yeah, I was wondering like why did I end up on the bouncers? It was because they had a spot that they had to fill,
yeah.
and we didn't have any replacement players for that. So your spot got replaced by the worst possible athlete to play
Not
slam
true.
ball.
Not true. It got replaced by the person who envisioned it. So like I
Uh,
said, so again, you mentioned, the different sports you played when you were growing up,
mhm.
of the three, two, and the video games, which one would you say you were the best at?
I was pretty solid at basketball. I could dribble the ball. I could pass like surprisingly well. And I think for my size, so I've always played guard, which was great because I would have a size advantage, and a lot of times I would have a strength advantage. I could drive the ball, I could shoot a little bit, I could hit pull up shots, and if the defender took one step back too far, I was taking off on people and I was posterizing people. Like that was the thing that I lived for. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was, I loved basketball. I spent all my time trying to get better at basketball. But the thing that I could do that was a little bit special was I would just take off on people with reckless abandon. Like I didn't care what happened to me. I wanted to go up in the air, bang into somebody above the rim, and then deliver an exclamation point. And crowds like kind of anticipated watching me in games like going for those type of plays. And I'm not saying I had a huge like percentage of posters, but I went for like everything I possibly could, and I loved dunking. I remember I would travel to like I would drive an hour, 2 hours away from home to find a court where people didn't know me, and so that they would try to like block my dunk. And so that was something that I was really fascinated with. And I had this idea from just sort of being obsessed with dunking that every great sport is built around a confrontation, right? It's a pitcher and a batter, right? Diametrically opposing forces. It's the quarterback and the free safety, right? It's the linebacker and the running back. It's like these diametrically opposing forces are the things that the greatest sports are built on. So when I was building Slam Ball, I was like, it's not just about pull up jumpers and moving the ball. It's about pressure at the rim. It's about how do you get two diametrically opposing forces to come together and you get something different every time. That never becomes boring, right?
Mhm.
So that was really the big thing. And in the highest levels of basketball, the pressure on the rim has really fallen off. And that's where I think the opportunity for slam ball is in terms of the market fit, is that people really like crave those diametrically opposing forces. And I think slam ball delivers on that and everything else that's involved in slam ball. But it sure is a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, and that was that was one of the hardest things for me to get into was the face-offs. You know,
Yeah.
because where a lot of and I want to get in this later, but that face-off portion of it was what was hard for me.
Mm.
But it's funny when you mentioned that. I made me think back to a story that I had that I've also never shared this one with you.
Mm.
My freshman year in college, I'm sitting on the floor stretching. Not necessarily stretching, but we're in the team because again, back then we got in a big circle and we would always stretch as a team. Now people just kind of do it on their own. But we're sitting in there, and one of my assistant coaches walked by who had just got done playing. You know, he looks down at me and he's like, "Well, why aren't you stretching?" I said, "Man, you know, I don't need to stretch. I walk in the gym and I can do a windmill dunk." You know, again, I'm an 18-year-old. If
Mm.
anything, if anybody knows about, I was an 18-year-old uneducated kid when it came to stuff like that, right? You know, I was invincible. You couldn't tell me anything. You know,
Mhm.
nowadays everything hurts. So, but so in that moment, you know, I'm like, you know, I don't need to stretch. He's like, all right, I'm telling you, you want to stretch. I'm like, again, he's 4 years older than me, so he's 22 at the time, and literally 6 months out of playing. I said, well, look, why don't you just go up and dunk? And he said, I don't dunk anymore. I'm done playing. I
Mm.
said, well, whatever. He said, I'll dunk again when it's worth 3 points. So it would have been a
Wow.
perfect opportunity for him to play slam ball. I was like, hey, because you know, 4 years later, I'm like, hey, I found a chance for you to dunk for 3 points now if you want to do it.
That's it.
So,
That's it.
but
Well,
yeah,
I actually think that's a real design flaw in basketball because you take the pressure off the rim. When
mhm,
the 3-point line just became so much more valuable, when an attempt from 3-point land became so much more valuable than attacking the rim, it took so much pressure. You lose the like David Robinsons and the Hakeem
mhm,
Olajuwons that are protecting the rim.
yep,
Those guys just don't have a place in the game anymore, and that's just because that it's like you have to. The defense has to sell out to protect the rim, or else what are we watching? And
right,
the highest levels of basketball, you get past your initial defender at the 3-point line, and it's like a free ride to the rim, and nobody's rotating over because they don't want to give up us the three on a
that's it.
swing.
Yep.
So it's really the math of it. It doesn't work, but in slam ball, it's like the best shot if you're going to win is to attack the rim, and that's where you're going to get the opportunity to help your team the most. And that's very much by design. I think as slam ball evolves, we're going to have like lights out Chef Curry type, shooters, God willing. We find guys that can really do that thing at the highest level, and can impact the game and stretch the floor and do all these things. But statistically, because the dunk is worth three in slam ball, and the dunk has to be defined in a certain way, but
Mhm.
because of that, that you never take the pressure off the rim. And because you never take the pressure off the rim, you never take your foot off the gas as a viewer. It's like if you watch hockey live, people all talk about how great ice hockey is live, right? And it's like you're going down the court and it's like, oh, oh,
Mhm.
oh, until there's a score, and then everybody goes crazy. Well, you get that same type of anticipation in slam ball, I think.
Yeah, no, you're getting people up and then you're getting them down really quick. And it's kind of like you get some of those fan bases are like, this year is going to be our year. Then they go the number one seed, and all of a sudden, yeah, we got it. And then it's boom. But
Yeah.
you're getting that feeling every other play down the floor, and that is one thing that I truly think is amazing about the sport of slam ball that a lot of people just don't really think about how thought out the game was,
Mhm.
and how the game does evolve. And again, like you said, which was news to me, you weren't planning on playing. So
Yeah.
now that I know that, let me ask you this question. Since you decided to play, you're the creator of Slam Ball. For the most part, you make the rules. Nobody would know if you change the rules if you tell them this is what it is. Why didn't you why didn't you build rules around yourself and what you could do to make you the best slam ball player of all time?
Because it was never about me. Like, the what my vision was is to create a platform for the most athletic, the toughest, the most courageous athletes that we could possibly find, and to give them a platform to reach millions and millions of viewers. So from that standpoint, like I really did achieve something that I set out to do in order to do that. It was never about getting anybody to pay attention to me. I always had this thought that I could just, oversee what was going on and just try to support people with what I saw in the game. But early on, it was like, man, that guy, it was like I was playing and the other players were mostly, maybe there were counter narratives, but what I heard from almost everybody, because the coaches would come tell me and the players that I was most friendly with would come tell me. And they would say that most of the players would be like, man, that guy's getting beat up worse than anybody. So if he's signing our checks
Hmm.
and he's getting and he's getting the brunt of the physical play, because who doesn't want to hit their boss, right? And you got to do that in slam ball. And there was one play where somebody actually knocked me over the team box and I fell
Hmm.
into the opposing team box. And everybody in the box let me fall. And I got up and I started screaming at people like, what the hell? I was like, I should fire you and I should fire you. And the opposing coach was like, hey man, just get back in the game. Like,
Right.
don't yell at my players, kind of thing. So, because the animosity in slam ball, it's more like football than it is like basketball, energy wise,
Mhm.
and people really get up for it, like from a competitive standpoint. So, yeah, it was really never about me and my athletic stuff. What I did figure out how to do is to just commit to doing things that nobody was focused on, like the series 3 where I subbed in for your roster spot. I just shot tramp jumpers, like 2 point tramp jumpers. And that like drew out a lot of the defense and forced the defense to do a lot of things that they weren't comfortable with. And that opened up other scoring opportunities for my teammates. And when I started doing it, other people started doing it. And I knew this was a big feature of the game, but people had to see somebody actually put it into practice before they would commit the kind of mind space that it took to actually like roll it out powerfully in the game. And then better athletes than me started doing it, and slam ball became really interesting. It wasn't just a dunk fest; it was all this skill and teamwork and patterns and all this amazing stuff that hopefully we'll get to build on as the sport moves forward.
Yeah, no, you talk about just the different skill sets that guys have. I mean, you got ball handlers coming in there, and what a lot of people don't understand is the differences in the floor from just any other playing surface that we play that people play sports on. So you talk about having that Steph Curry s type shooter. They got to understand it's a different shot. And that was something that was hard for me to learn how that. You even talk about a tramp shot, because a lot of times in basketball, you got kids that are shooting on the way up or they're shooting at their peak, but
Mhm.
now you're actually shooting downward into the basket in some cases. So, they just got to understand all of the different skill sets and just how the game has evolved and what you need to do and learn. Cause I'll never forget when you gave me that phone call in February of 2008, said, hey, I need you in this city I've never heard of in my entire life, Bradenton, which is now
Bradenton.
like an hour from me. And I
Yeah,
need
yeah,
you here in a month.
Bradenton.
You were
Yeah,
like, okay, I need you to be in shape for running. I need you to be in shape for jumping. I need you to be in shape for getting hit. And I was like, oh, what do I do? You said, well,
yeah,
get on the trampoline or get on the jump on the trampoline as much as you can. We call them tramps, but a lot. So, but you were like, get on a treadmill too. Do your interval training, 4 minutes to one, sprint for 4 minutes, jog for 1 minute. And I literally went to the gym every day for that next month and did that.
yeah.
So, But something you said in the last, your last answer just kind of stuck with me. You talked about creating this platform for people, and I think that's one of the most impressive things that I can think of because growing up, a lot of people, a lot of kids and athletes have this dream of playing professional, and you actually what you created helped them get that opportunity to achieve that dream. So when I know you kind of hit on it, but when you just think about just the sheer number of athletes whose lives have been impacted and changed by your creation, not just here in America. You guys have been over to China and done stuff all overseas.
Yeah.
What goes through your mind when you think about how many lives you've touched and dreams you've been able to help people achieve?
That's a tough one for me to articulate only because I haven't done as much as I've wanted to for every single person. This I've got just a lot of love and respect and just emotional investment in every single person, every single player, every single coach that's kind of brought their passion and their joy or their ferocity or whatever it is that's kind of their dominant personality traits that they brought to slam ball, their competitiveness, their drive to be great, their drive to be the absolute best. People athletes are made up of different components and stuff like that, and they're all individual people that I feel like I've developed a genuine relationship with since the very beginning. And that's hard to do. They say the human brain is only kind of designed to be able to filter like 140 relationships, going back to the hunter gatherer tribes and stuff like that. Like if you get more than that, if you get groups more than that like migrating together, it starts to be bad. So it's kind of a limitation of our brains and our social capacity. And yet I feel like I have a relationship with literally 500, 700 like players that have played slam ball, maybe up to 1,000 if you include people. I remember everybody that came to training camp and got cut on the first day. I remember every single person. I remember their face, I remember their name, sometimes I remember their birthday.
Oh,
And I text them once a year. It's like that kind of thing. And it's not that I'm really proud of everything that we've done on this, and I want this to be like this incredible breakthrough for slam ball players, and I want it to be transformative, not just for the fact that they get to play professionally and maybe check a box, but it gets to be a facility for them to augment their lives and to have like a lasting impact, beyond just the joy of playing the sport for as long as they have. I want this to be a sport that's dependable, that's there year in and year out, that has a legacy. We have a legacy going back, but a legacy that's being built on every single day. And I think we have a good plan to do that going forward.
yeah, no, and I think you talk about the different relationships that you've built yourself, and I think there's also something to be said for the relationships that have been built because of this. Like I told you, Trevor Anderson, TA, works out my kids. He's helping my kids along with their journey. My particular rooming situation. I don't even know if you remember how I got my room
Mm.
when we were at IMG, but I was in the gym and we Rob had brought me, Calvin Patterson, and Rodney Bond over from the airport,
Mhm.
and they were like, okay, well, they would say, okay, well, where's he going to go stay at? And I think Corey Beeshold and Scott Campbell had recently left the gym, and Scott had brought his twin brother Chris,
Mhm.
and we had quads at the apartments. You were like, well, Scott and Corey just left, so he can go in there with him and the twin. And I was like, okay. And I tell you to this day, I know unfortunately we just lost Scott last year, but Corey, Chris, and I still have a group chat.
Oh, that's
And
great.
that is again, and we've actually invited Hooker to it. Adam Hooker's in our group chat. So
That's
our
awesome.
our apartment number was 913. So every 13th of the month, we always check in with each other.
That's
So
amazing. How
so
great was
that's
Corey?
you.
How great was Corey Beeshold that season, though? It wasn't that amazing. He
Corey,
was. a
Corey
monster.
did this. Corey would did. I saw him do this outside tramp dunk where he would do a 180, spread his legs, bring it between his legs, and dunk it backwards. And as a
Mhm.
basketball player, dunking backwards was the hardest thing for me because I could never find the rim.
Mhm.
So I've never successfully completed a backwards dunk in a game because I can never find the rim. I'd rather 360 and turn around and find it. But
Yeah.
Corey to be able to find that rim and the play that was him and Ice when he came down the middle,
Oh
that
yeah.
was on my screensaver for a long time.
That's a
So,
really good picture. You know,
yeah,
Corey won't remember this, but maybe he will but it was just it really stuck with me. Corey did this like leg splayed 360 thing that was the coolest looking thing ever.
yeah,
And
that
he'd do the whole rotation, then he'd pause, and then he'd do like a late full extension windmill.
mhm,
And it was the craziest thing. And it's like all those type of little things hopefully get communicated and translated to the next generation. That's part of what I'm trying to do with the younger guys is like get them to understand that they're part of this continuum and all the tools that they need, not just to be great at the sport, but to really punch through the social fabric and really like make a name for themselves and elevate the sport and elevate their own platform. It's built on guys like Corey, guys like you, guys James Lee, guys that have done it in the past, and really had like these incredible creative breakthroughs that they need to take advantage of. So hopefully that's the kind of culture that we're building, and I think we are.
yeah. Now I told I recently interviewed TA and I recently interviewed Pat, and I came up with this. It just on the spot when I was talking with Pat, I said, and I don't know where it came from, but I said, Slam Ball is like Olive Garden. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Because when you become a part of Slam Ball, you become family." And
Yeah,
I was
like
like, so it's literally like, you've built all these different relationships in a roundabout way of, no slam ball babies or nothing because we don't have women's slam ball yet, but when it'd be like how you see on all these reality TV shows. So, but
well, we
no,
had like five, I think five second generation players
hmm
like playing in this series six, which
yeah,
is
Bird,
an amazing thing. Uh,
yeah, Bird,
Brian
Jamal,
Bell, both of Bird's kids,
yeah,
Jamal Barnes Jr., who was an absolute freak show.
beast,
He was
yeah,
amazing, and I think and there's definitely one more. But yeah, that was really amazing to see, and to see that they were so like amped for it. You know, they were
hmm
so amped to like take what their dad did and then take it to the next level. I thought that was pretty amazing. Although it's hard to outdo George Bird. He was
oh
he
yeah.
was really something special.
That play where the guy loses his shoe would have been the original viral moment. If social media would have been around like it was back in 20 was that was '03, that was series 2. So
Well,
but I would tell you,
the good news about that is that part of why we relaunched SlamBall as a live bettable league that broadcasts games live is because fans would take old highlights. I'm talking 10, 12, 15-year-old highlights and post them on social media. And they would go stupid viral. I mean,
yeah.
crazy numbers. And that play with George Bird, I think, has 20 million views on
Mhm.
TikTok, like something absolutely insane. And this would happen like every week. And just so people know, like it still happens like
Mhm.
in January, like January 23rd, an Instagram account with 9,000 followers put up a random clip of slam ball highlights, and it did 15 million views, like just
Wow.
organically. So this is like slam ball has this demonstrated virality over a very long period of time, and that's a big deal because people on the internet aren't interested in something that happened 10 days ago, much
Yeah.
less 10 years ago. But that's what Snoop is posting on his Instagram for the fifth time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I still remember that, and during 2023 when his video went viral. So, but when you talk about that, so you talk about the original virality of it. The hashtag Bring Back Slamball is what
Yeah.
helped bring Slamball back in 2023. It started trending and fans worldwide. When you think back to that, what did that moment teach you about the legacy and cultural impact of what you guys have been able to create?
I was just so excited by it because I had spent some time with an intern at MSM that I want to shout out. His name's Harrison Golding, who has gone on to become like a really amazing like digital media superstar, and not himself, but like he orchestrates social media at a really, really high level. And he's gotten into the music business and he's incredibly successful at that. And a lot of that tracks back to him taking our Facebook page, which at the time was like it just sort of existed. And he absolutely like kind of he saw the slam ball clips and thought they were awesome, and he started packaging them in really cool ways, and that Facebook absolutely took off. Our the clips during that run were 5 million views, 15 million views. One clip had 70 million views. I mean, that's a Justin Bieber video, right?
Right.
So it was absolutely insane. And he kind of set the template by putting a lot of cool stuff out there. It was kind of like he would do stuff like, me on Friday, me on Saturday, me on Sunday, and me on Monday, the guy gets stuffed, right? So he would do stuff like that that was really clever. And he had these like me versus you clips where he'd like map me on the guy going up to dunk and you on the guy trying to stop him, and then you get dunked on, and then like send this to somebody you dunk on, right? So at that point in the internet, like that was like catnip, and we were the first people doing that. So it was going everywhere, and it was we had clips that had 1 million shares and things like that. So the numbers were gigantic. So when Harrison sort of set that template, and there were a bunch of video clips that were bouncing around with ridiculous view numbers, right? That's what that's what really motivated a lot of fans of what they were seeing to like put their own clips up on their own platforms. And then sure enough, these things would just catch the algorithm and go viral, and it would happen over and over and over again. Sometimes multiple times a day we'd have clips doing 3 4 5 million views, and just going crazy viral, and certainly multiple clips in any given week. So the hashtag Bring Back Slamball movement, we hired a digital consultant to like put a lasso around, like how much viewership is this really, and he said it was over 1 billion views, like based on this report. And that's when we said, okay, let's really look at what it would take to bring slam ball back as a live sport and a live league. And that was kind of the beginning of the road to where we are right now.
Yeah, no, I still see videos today of me versus you for just everything.
Yeah, right.
But it's good to know where that came from. So, so a little earlier you talked about in sports, right? You bring a collection of guys together. Now, I give you guys credit because a lot of our program when I came through in 2008, I know thought was put into it because I remember the very first thing y'all did was put us on the tramps and say, "All right, you got to get comfortable just jumping straight up and down." So y'all took us from the beginning. But
Mhm.
kind of in part of that, you're bringing together lots of guys from all over the country that do different things. A lot of us did have sports backgrounds, but some of us didn't. So if I just think back to my bouncer team in '08, you had me with a basketball background, but just some of the things that other guys did, like Chris Lee was a model. Josh was in a Christian rock
Chris Young.
band.
Chris
Chris
Young was
Young,
a
Ghetto Bird.
yeah.
Yep. Josh Carlson was in a Christian rock band. Rodney was an MMA fighter. Sandy Fletcher was a football player at USC. So you're
Right.
bringing a lot of guys from a lot of different aspects of life together, and without sacrificing your own body this time, what are some other ways that you felt that you guys were able to bring teamwork together? Instead of having to have Jeff hit you very hard to make everybody else feel better.
Yeah. I mean, my thing was I wanted to be constantly present at the court and just like whatever I was seeing without stepping on the coaches. Like I never walked out into practice and said, "Hey, you do this, you do that." It was always like I took notes, I met with the coaches after, and I was just trying to give them the benefit of what I knew and what my experience was because nobody has thought about this more than I have. And because of that, I like to think that my knowledge base was pretty well organized. So if I felt like whatever the personnel was on a given team, that I could help nudge them in a direction where they could have an identity that was separate and distinct from the other teams, right? And I had to do that 8 times, or in series 3 it was 6 times, right? And it was important that these teams had were running different things and were doing different things, because I didn't want just kind of a clone of maybe what some critics say about the NBA, where they all are just running the same double drag and horns actions and things like that. You want different personality to come through in each team. So I was always there. What was interesting about what you're saying is that Josh was in a rock band. Josh was a drummer in a rock band. Rodney was an MMA fighter. Jamal Barnes was a legit MMA fighter, right? And but every single one of them were basketball stud athletes, and every single one was a junkyard dog of a competitor. And that's who makes it onto slam ball teams. Is you got to have a chip on your shoulder and you got to bring a competitive drive every single day. And that's what every single guy on your team on the bouncers did. And I love being a part of that team. It was so talented. Like Sandy Fletcher was an absolute like monster, and he only got minimal minutes on that team because there was so much talent there. And it was really a question of how far how quickly could these teams coalesce, because we'd be in training camps where you only had a handful of weeks to really come together and crystallize, and it happened better for some teams than it did with others. But I will maintain that if they had you, I think the bouncers like walk with that championship. I think you guys. I think it would have been you guys and the Slashers in the finals,
Slashers.
and I think
Slashers were good. Yeah.
yeah.
Slashers were good. So, but yeah, no, again, I appreciate it. So now, so as you kind of think about it, there's been like you said, I think you said the number might be around 1,000. So a small group of people that have actually played this game.
Mhm,
People worldwide have seen this game on TV. But again, slam ball's played in a couple different locations. You've been China, you've been Atlanta a couple times, LA a couple times, Vegas. So there's also a small group of people. Now, Vegas gave the opportunity to have people come travel as a destination, but
mhm,
being one of the few people who have seen the sport on TV, played it inside the glass, and also seen it from the stands on the other side of the glass, there's something that kind of has stuck with me from the beginning, and it goes back to training camp. We did, the pre-draft camp. We had 2 weeks in there, and
mhm,
what a lot of people may not understand was how I said, "You guys really planned this out, right?" So for the first 2 weeks, we're sitting there, we're doing two-a-days, but we never got a basketball. We're learning how to jump. We're learning how to fall. We're learning how to do Z drills. We're doing conditioning. We even had, I don't know if you remember the guy. His name was HJ. We were playing frisbee. What's the frisbee football game out at IMG? So we were doing all kinds of stuff to just kind of prepare our bodies for it. But the day before the draft, we're sitting there. We had gone through our whole practice, and then you walk out on the floor, and you have the basketball in your hand, well, the slam ball, not in your hand, and you told everybody to line up, and you said, "Here, I'm gonna give everybody one chance to dunk the ball." You said, and I quote, this statement stuck with me: Don't be the guy that came to slam ball and not slam the ball. Because if you do, all you're going to leave with is this shirt that everybody got, right?
Yeah.
So in that moment, you said that, and you would get guys that would go and they would try to windmill or they would try to do whatever. In that moment, again, everybody's tried all kinds of stuff throughout the whole 2 weeks we've been there. I went top tramp, bottom tramp, and just put a two-handed dunk in because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to be the guy that came to slam ball and not slam the ball if I don't get drafted tomorrow. Um, so, kind of with a statement like that, what lesson are you trying to teach athletes about understanding their purpose and fully embracing the opportunity that's in front of them?
I mean, slam ball, we've had the opportunity to stand up slam ball multiple times, and every time is a chance for immortality, right? It's a chance for a ragtag group of players, coaches, executives, support staff, all these things to come together and coalesce into something that's undeniable, right? Something that punches a hole in the side of the universe. Like that's it's hyperbolic, but that's the way I approach this. That's the way my team approaches this. That's the way I want every single person that's involved in slam ball when they step on that court. I want them to think, I'm going to come together with the people around me and we're going to punch a hole in the universe, and nobody's ever going to be able to deny the value of what we bring to the sports landscape. That's the big swing. And I think that the notion of what I was trying to communicate is that opportunities aren't promised. Opportunities that are in front of you have to seize them in that moment. And if and the idea that, oh, it'll be there tomorrow or it'll be there the next day, you know trust me, I've learned the hard way that that's not the case. And you have to seize what is in front of you. And God's plan might not be for that moment to be your like legacy making moment, that it might be somewhere downstream. But I sure know that your best opportunity to leave a mark on this earth is in the opportunity that you have in your hands. And that's what I was trying to communicate.
Yeah, and what you're saying is exactly true because a lot of people may not know that as we went through those first 2 weeks, there were still cuts. There were people that went home. And then even then, it's as somebody who got drafted in the second to last round, I sat there for 6 rounds. In my head, I'm like, okay, I know each team gets two keepers. Well, I know
Yeah.
this guy's going. And I'm just watching pick by pick go by, and I'm like, well, I guess at least I did slam the ball. But and for me, it all worked out and everything, and so I'm eternally grateful for that opportunity. But yeah, like you said, that opportunity that I have right now, the opportunity knocks once for some people, and if you're not able to answer that door, or if you're, I guess I'll use this generation, if you're on your phone or on a tablet and that opportunity goes by you, because you see it every day. You got kids that are wanting that are going to skip a workout for their team, or just the workout they can do on their own because they're playing a video game or because they're on social media or something.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah. So again, you said you use this term, punch a hole in the universe. So we're in 2026 now. 2024, I had to sit through about a 3 week span of watching worldwide sports, and things like basketball was fun. It was fine. I was okay with that. Gymnastics, swimming. But then I had to watch things like breakdancing. I had to watch things like 3-on-3 basketball, and now they're trying to get into flag football and softball. How do we get slam ball in the Olympics?
All right. Well, I will tell you that I'm not interested in putting slam ball in the Olympics. And
Really?
there's a very specific reason for that. When you work with, when we have played slam ball in Europe, we have played slam ball in China. We expect that the sport is going to take root all over the world. We expect that this will happen. But I'm not gunning for an Olympic berth, because if the sport is adopted by the Olympics, then they're going to do whatever they're going to do with your sport, right? They're going to do however they interpret that as Olympic slam ball. And we're going to have very little to say about it. However, if you establish a World Cup format, which we are doing, that is a global format of global consequence that you actually can control the quality, and you can control the competitive formats, and you can control the how the games are called and things like that, in order to make sure that you're delivering the highest quality sports product and the highest quality competition. So if I had a gun to my head right now and they said, would you rather have slam ball in the Olympics or the World Cup or a slam ball World Cup? A slam ball World Cup 99 times out of 100.
Okay. So now, did you just give me breaking news? Is that out there now? SlamBall World Cup is coming.
We've been working on it for a while, man. We've been working on it for a while. There's an interest level. There's the idea is that we have to establish like the sport in different parts of the world. And then once we have that, we'll start with a smallish World Cup draw. And then ultimately, that's going to encourage more people to develop their own slam ball programs. So I think that's kind of where the global puzzle of slam ball goes.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. And again, so I changed my question now. I understand it more from your perspective of it, and I think a World Cup slam ball is a much better opportunity, for just the growth in the future of the game than going to the Olympics. Because
I
I
like
think
it.
even sports like we just had the hockey was just done, but you get
Great.
some people like this is bigger than a Stanley Cup, but the World Cup soccer is the biggest event in the world,
Mhm.
and people will look at it and say, I would rather have a World Cup championship than an Olympic championship in that game. So,
Yeah.
again, that's why you're where you are and you are who you are, and I'm just the guy on the other side of the microphone. You understand this more than I
Uh,
do.
Nico, what I told your audience that you were way too self-deprecating, man. You've been one of my favorite people for a very, very long time, Dwayne. So I really appreciate you, and I love what you're doing with the podcast.
Awesome. I really appreciate you for that. So, so again, I think about it. Earlier, you mentioned, you would come to all the practices and everything, and but you're right. You stayed out of it. You didn't really like tell the coach what drills to do or what offenses to do. As long as that concept of we're not all going to run the same offense was there, because again, that's how you continue to grow the sport, and you have your differences through playing through slam ball. You've had the opportunity to see a lot of great athletes as well as a lot of remarkable coaches. I'm kind of partial to Coach Hernando Pinellas,
Mhm.
but you've also seen people like Coach Carter. Everybody knows Coach Carter. Joe Jellybean Bryant was the coach in Series One. So being around those kind of leaders like that, what are some of the lessons that you've taken from working with those kind of people that could be helpful?
Yeah, that list is so great. Brendan Kirsch, one of
Coach
the
Kirsch.
greatest slam ball minds of all time. Series 6, he led his team, led the Mob to a undefeated season, which was something we never thought we'd saw because of the physical attrition of slam ball. So you can't have that list without having Brendan on it. Xavier McDaniel, I want to shout out, is one of my favorite people who had a tremendous NBA career. John Starks, Kenny Anderson. These guys were so great to come and really buy into the sport, and they just loved it because it was so much more intense than a basketball game. There was a new gear and a new level of competitiveness, and these guys are world class competitors. So that was really great to see. Kevin Stapleton,
Oh,
who is a
Stapleton. Yeah.
coach I absolutely love. And Coach Stapleton's a world champion. Brendan Kirsch is a world champion. I'm really glad that these guys who are true leaders of men, in their lives and in their careers, had the opportunity to, lead a group of guys towards a really lofty goal, to win the slam ball, world championship, and to be able to say that we stood, above the field as world champions. That's something that you can take with you for a lifetime. And I know a lot of these guys do, because I'm sure Corey is on your text thread all the time,
Mhm.
and Adam Hooker is on the text thread all the time, talking about how they have a world championship and you don't. So
Yeah, and they also talk about, because again, Chris Campbell's in there. That last play was at the semifinals where Chris attacks the
yeah,
island, and Adam's like, "Well, I knew you weren't coming in here, so I just played whoever was coming from the outside tramp."
that's it.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
they do talk about that, but again, like you said, there's been some incredible coaches that have been able to just see this game and understand it and kind of bring some help to just the players. Because again, like I said, I had Coach H and I had Coach Barakoff. They were two people that kind of taught us the ins and outs of the games, and again, because without that coach being that final puzzle piece, your team is only going to go so far, and Coach H has been there from
Yeah.
the beginning.
I love Hernando. I talked to him just the other day. He's back and forth to Dubai
Yep.
these days, and he's doing a lot of great things in Qatar and these incredible like MENA markets that are so chock full of opportunity. Right now, it's a pretty fraught time with the conflict over there,
Mhm.
but Hernando's like had this amazing career and just coached at the highest level, done stuff in entertainment. He's just a really impressive guy, and I really love these coaches. I want to give a shout out to the late great George Raveling, great USC basketball coach, Hall of Famer. George, I had a meeting with him really early. I went to Michael Jordan's basketball camp, and I sat with George Raveling and I showed him slam ball, and he was absolutely fascinated by it. And he said, "I have one piece of advice for you." He goes, "I know you think you know everything about this, but the real magic is going to be when the your players, the young people, like they start to figure it out and they're going to do things with it that you never even thought were humanly possible." And that's really the magic. It's like you have to give the players, you have to give the coaches, this was Raveling telling me this, you have to give them the room to like experiment, and that something really really great is going to happen. So I know you want this to happen a certain way, but you've got to have that mental flexibility and emotional flexibility to let go a little bit and let people make their own mark in the sport. And that's where you see things like Stan Fletcher and the way he
Mhm.
played, Adam Hooker and the way he played, Sean Jackson and the way he played. All these guys really brought something unique to the sport, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah, and credit to you because you're giving the reins to your baby, to these people, to to not only critique but to improve and all of that. So there's something to be said for the opportunity that you give to people, but just the fact that you're able to do that. Again, like I said, this none of this would be possible without you, Mace. So
Right.
all righty. So I talked about it a little earlier. That in slam ball, one thing that has to happen is, you allow athletes, you created something that allows athletes to overcome their fears, from flying through the air 15, 20 feet in the air, to the big hits, to the free falling, to just the overall physical nature of the game of slam ball, right? So for me, two things I had to overcome was my initial fear of heights, and to this day I still hate flying. So getting up there, that was one thing. I crashing out. Once y'all taught me how to do it, I was fine with it. All of that. But for me, it was what we talked about earlier. It was those face-offs, right? So we were probably a week into actual team practice when Hernando looks at me and he says, "Hey, I want you to try stopper." And I said, Because now, for those who don't understand, the three people in the world who may not have seen SlamBall, the stopper is your all-time defense, right? He is the person, he or she, if we get there, is the person who stays back in most cases, and they're your rim protector. They are the ones that's creating that crash in that moment up in 15, 20 feet in the air. So me being a basketball player, one thing we don't like to do is to get dunked on. But in slam ball, you got to have a short memory, right? So it wasn't but about 2 plays into me playing stopper when I got called for drifting by Rob Wilson. Again, Hernando just threw me out there, said, go play stopper. Had no idea what I was doing. I got called for drifting. And in
Uh-huh.
that moment, I have to then go to this face off. Was the scariest thing of my life. And we were actually practicing with the Rumble that day. So I'm fair. It was either Jelani or Whitney who I had to go up against, and it was not anything that I wanted to do. But like I said, I had to have a short memory. I got dunked on, moved on. So in designing this game, did you ever realize that you were creating something that allowed people to face their fears and overcome them through something as strong as and powerful as sports?
I've never thought of it that way. I always thought of it as, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could combine these different skill sets? And could you get an athlete that nobody had ever seen before, right? Like, what if you could take the skills of a Kobe Bryant and mix them with the physicality of a Ray Lewis? Well, nobody has ever seen that athlete before. He's never existed. So that was kind of the template, and the notion of there being like this hill to overcome. I always felt like we were just attracting the guys that LaMonica Garrett, who's gone on to become a big television star and has been in movies, and his career is really amazing because Slamball played some small part in helping platform him and his acting opportunities. He played a Slamball player on One Tree Hill, and that helped him book a lot of great stuff. But LaMonica used to say, you got to have a screw loose to play this because you're basically, attacking somebody, and he would think of it as as a linebacker, right? Where it's like, you're running into somebody, and there's this big collision.
Yeah. No. And again, like I said, it was again the way that you guys structured everything for helping all of us as we're going through learning everything. It was detailed enough to where some of those fears we were able to get rid of immediately, and then other ones we just through time and playing we were able to overcome them. So it was like I said, everything was done perfect in my experience, and I'm not at a point anymore in my life where I'm worried about getting on the beds and going high, and I do all of that, and I'll crash out and teach people how to, tuck your arms, roll on your side, and knock it out. You'll be fine when you get up. We've talked about the slam ball. That's something that we could probably go on and talk about for a long time. But another aspect of what I think, I'm proud to say that I know you and have a relationship with you and a friendship with you is, you've worked with Mandalay Sports Media, and through doing that work, you were able to work on some of the greatest sports documentaries of all time. From one of brought my childhood back with The Last Dance to get to see those Bulls teams. The captain with Derek Jeter. Again, I was a front runner, so I was a Yankees fan when they had Jeter and A-Rod and all of them for a couple of years, and then the Redeem team, the team that helped bring us, the gold medal back. So you worked on giving us a front row seats to some of the stories of some of the greatest athletes of all time. What is something that going through that process taught you about what truly separates the greats from the rest of the athletes?
Well, what was interesting was, I was taking slam ball around the world, and Mike Tolan and Peter were launching Mandalay Sports Media. Peter Guber owns the Golden State Warriors and the Dodgers, and he's one of the biggest movie producers of all time. And so they were launching this company, and they reached out to me and they said, hey, we really want you to get involved in this. We think you'd be really good at it. So I joined as a executive producer and feature creative. Ultimately, I became president of the company and was in a leadership role, which was amazing. And the work that we did there was really incredible. But when I first joined, the thing that got me to commit was that they said, listen, we know you're all in on SlamBall, but if you come work with us, we'll get you involved with the biggest sports leagues, the biggest sports stars, and the top executives. So that when SlamBall comes back around, which we all think it will, you'll actually be in a position to like lead the company and have the chops. And so that was like too good of an opportunity for me to pass up. And true to their word, they got me involved with the biggest sports stars in the world, the biggest sports leagues, the biggest executives. And that made a gigantic difference in the trajectory of my life and given me an incredible, like, knowledge base and experience base to draw from so that I have a lot of confidence in what I'm doing leading SlamBall. And as far as like what did I learn from like being around all these amazing people, it's that it isn't just the star at the end of the chain that gets all the attention that everybody focuses on. It's the support system, it's their family, it's the organization behind them. That's really what platforms people and platforms greatness. And I learned that lesson along the way from almost every major sports league, almost every major sports executive, and almost every major sports star that I dealt with is that they had an army behind them that helped give them and their natural abilities and their work ethic a chance to really blossom.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. You know, you hear things like it takes a village. You know, it really does. You know, you have to have the talent and the work ethic, but you know, without having all the other pieces that go to it, you know, you're only going to be able to go so far.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, I appreciate you, you know, giving us all those nuggets and everything, and we kind of dive in there. So after I kind of go through a lot of, you know, where I wanted to pick your brain, what I wanted to learn about Mason, the Mason before I knew Mason, and everything, you know, I'd always do a little rapid fire segment. So I'll give you a quick question. You tell me the first thing that comes to mind. You know, no pressure, no right answer, no wrong answer. All right. So, all righty. What is your slam ball career high?
In points,
Yep.
oh, I certainly had 20 points at one point, like in a game.
Yeah.
There was a game where I went off. That probably happened two or three times.
Yeah.
But I was by no means the best player on the floor at any given time. But I had the ability to get hot sometimes.
All right. So again, you're probably the only person who's seen every play of slam ball. So, but again, you've been there from the beginning. So, what in your mind was the first slam ball play you saw? You can remember where it hit you, and you were like, "This is happening."
Oh man. Um, oh yeah, I know what it was. In the warehouse, there was, you said people had to get over their fears, right?
Hmm.
So people were trying to do everything except just take off on the stopper and try to dunk on the defender. They wanted to kind of juke the stopper, get a free lane. Nobody was like trying to go chest to chest at the rim, right? And then the day that we brought in cameras and we started shooting the games for the first time, uh, Rob Wilson lined up in a face-off against Dion Mays, and these are the two biggest, strongest guys in that are playing slam ball at the time. Rob is 6'9", 250 pounds. Dion Mays is 6'7", 245. Basketball stud, football player at Fresno State. Like these are the big, strong, scary guys, right? And Rob gets way like super chest over the rim and is just gonna punch the ball. And Dion comes in late out of nowhere and absolutely destroys Rob's dunk attempt. and I have a picture of it. It's the craziest picture, but the it was like the moment that everyone was just like, "Oh my god!" And it wasn't even a dunk, right? It
Yeah.
was that the defense could be as exciting as the offense, and wow, how great is that?
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen some of them where you just in its camera angles, you got a guy going, and all of a sudden, from the middle of the bottom of the screen, somebody shoots straight up and stops them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get you in a little bit of trouble. Least and most favorite slam ball team names.
Team names. Oh gosh. Let's see. The My favorite team name is probably the Mob because it was the original Slam Ball team. The Mob and the Rumble were the two original teams that we started Slam Ball in the warehouse. So it's got to be one of those. And the Rumble beat me in Series One for the championship. They beat my Diablos in the championship game. So I would never say I like the Rumble. Forget the Rumble. But it would probably be the Mob is my favorite. And my least favorite is a team that never really got the chance to be a team in Slam Ball. But in Series 3, we were going to have 8 teams.
I
And
knew you were going to pick one of them.
we ended up contracting to
Mm,
6 teams because we wanted all these teams to just be chock full of talent. And there was a team called the Rousties, and nobody knew what the Rousties was. It was a cool idea. Rousties are actually like oil rig workers. So like
hmm
the mascot would like have a big wrench or something like that, but
hmm
nobody was feeling it. I wanted it to be like the old like Houston Oilers
hmm
in the NFL with the like
Yeah.
baby blue colors and everything like that. But it was like the idea was too smart for its own good, and nobody could connect the dots.
Yeah, I had a strong feeling you were going to say the Rousties. I think I do remember you telling me at one point in time about that team name.
Yeah.
So, all righty. So again, like I said earlier, slam ball has been played in a lot of different locations and a lot of different continents. What is your favorite location that you've had for slam ball and least favorite?
My favorite location is my favorite location for slam ball that we played in is probably Cox Pavilion. You like came to see it.
Mhm.
That was really great because we were really able to make it our home. The people who run Cox Pavilion here in Las Vegas, when we set up like kind of our slam ball heaven in there, they were like, this venue has never looked this good. Like, this is unbelievable what you've done. And that was like a testament to our production designers and everything else. It was really an incredible execution, and it felt very big. So I really appreciated the our Series 6 venue here in Las Vegas. My least favorite was we were in a mall in China, and the court was put together really kind of shoddily, and I didn't trust it, so I kind of shut the whole thing down, and I wouldn't let it go forward. So that
Yeah.
the probably the mall activation that we did in China with a slam ball half court that did not fit together properly.
Yeah. My Cox Pavilion story that I like is the popcorn was amazing. How they were giving
It
away the free
was.
popcorn. That popcorn was good.
So Keenan Thompson is a really good friend of mine, and he was coming
Uh-huh.
through town. Just happened to be in Vegas, and he came in to see the games, and I was so proud for him to see it live. And he said the exact same thing. He was like, "This
Yeah.
popcorn is amazing,"
It's really good.
and all I wanted to hear him tell me is how great Slam Ball was. But he was just
Yeah.
like, "Man, this popcorn."
Yeah, you had the popcorn and the sofas up top. I was comfortable. I was at the
Yeah.
movie theater. So, all righty. So we'll get to these last few ones. So again, there's 3 generations of slam ball. OG slam ball, we got old slam ball, we got new slam ball. But if we just look at old slam ball and new slam ball, who's the hardest hitter in both generations?
The hardest hitting guy might be Justin Holmes, who plays for the Griffins, who was an all conference football player at San Jose State, and he would deliver giant hits on defense and giant hits on offense. And the only guy that correlates to that in in OG slam ball would be George Bird. Nobody could take somebody off their feet like George Bird. And you know what's funny is that we found a clip of George Bird playing professional basketball in Iceland, and he did the exact same thing, the basketball version of it, that play that you mentioned earlier, where he came dribbling up the right side and he just pancaked this guy and then took off and dunked it. And that happened in on the basketball court. So that just goes to show you, it's like what SlamBall does is it elevates and amplifies what you do naturally. And that's what's so exciting about the sport.
Definitely. All right. Best shooter, old and new slam ball.
Old slam ball, without a doubt, it's Snoop Jones. Snoop not only shot an amazing percentage from the floor, from every spot on the floor. He utilized the tramps really well. He was able to like time up his bounce so that he could get the defender, he could sell the defender that he was going in, but then he'd pull up and then just shoot jumpers over the top. So that was a really great skill set. And then Snoop went on to become a multi time MVP in Europe, and ultimately the coach of their national team. In terms of really building out his professional resume after slam ball. So he was absolutely tremendous. And then this time, Fessel Shafat,
Fessy.
Fessy, who was this unbelievable stopper, who was so talented, and he was an All-American football player, and an unbelievable athlete. But he really shot the cover off the ball, and part of that is because the stopper could kind of walk into the play and get an open opportunity. But he really, really shot the ball well, and that was surprising.
Yeah. Shout out to Fessy and the Lava. I know I just saw a promotion. He's doing the American Gladiators now.
Yeah, they
So
cast him
yeah.
on American Gladiators.
Yeah.
That's incredible. He's going to be amazing at that. He
Oh
really
yeah.
is.
Yeah, that's right up his alley. So yeah. So, all right. Well, again, I appreciate everything. And, so again, a lot of what I'm doing would not be possible without my sponsors. So I always thank my sponsors when I do my episodes. Uh, this episode of Beyond the Game More Stories is brought to you by Rise Flag Football. Rise Flag Football is a premier youth football experience powered by Under Armour, designed to help athletes build confidence, develop their skills, and create lifelong memories on the field. Their mission goes beyond competition. It's about teaching teamwork, leadership, discipline, and a love for the game that lasts far beyond the final whistle. From local fields right here in Central Florida to leagues and teams nationwide, Rise is creating opportunities for kids to learn the game in a positive, structured, and high energy environment. Through coaching, community, and competition, they're helping the next generation of athletes rise up with confidence and purpose. So if you got a young athlete at home looking to elevate their game, or if you're simply passionate about the youth sports, be sure to check out Rise Flag Football and see how they're making an impact across the country. And don't forget, follow them on social media for league highlights, skills, content, and all the action from youth flag football near you. A big thanks to Rise Flag Football for supporting the show and helping us continue to share powerful stories beyond the game. So, yeah. As we wrap up today's episode, again, I just wanted to thank, first and foremost, Rise Flag Football for the episode sponsor, but also on a personal note, Mason, I want to say thank you. I don't know how many of us former players have been able to just really just tell you how much we respect and appreciate everything that you've done for not only just the sport but for us individually, man. Because without the vision that you've had, a lot of us wouldn't have had these dreams of being a professional athlete, making the relationships and meeting the people that we have met because again, slam ball is, I believe, the greatest sport ever created. And like you said, man, the future for it is so bright. It's just a matter of lining everything up. And when it all comes together, again, you've got my support and I'm here for whatever you need that I can help you with. So I appreciate you and just thank you, Mason.
Thank you, Dwayne. You're one of one, man. I really appreciate you as well.
All right. And then I also appreciate you for taking the time to sit down and answer some of these questions. Cause, again, like I said, I've known you for 20 years now from the day you answered the phone to finally getting to meet you and the opportunities you gave me. So I appreciate you taking the time. Whenever I do this, I always give my guests the opportunity to come on, tell a little bit more about themselves. If there's anything you're working on or anything, project you got upcoming, social media, anybody wants to reach out to you to invest in SlamBall or anything like that, give you the opportunity to kind of, share your story and the floor is yours.
No, the only thing I would want to say is that, and I would want to say it publicly, because we've talked about a lot of things over the years, but I've never told you this. I actually owe you an apology because there, when you twisted your ankle at slam ball, and the timing wasn't going to work out for you to be able to play in that season. What should have happened is that I should have found a way. I would have had to let somebody else go, but I should have found a way to keep you around the sport as a assistant coach or some kind of form. So because your energy and your passion and your enthusiasm for what we were doing was just so vital, and missed that opportunity. Maybe because I didn't want to fire somebody else, but when I look back on it, it was just a major, major miss, and I really owe you. I owe you that apology.
Oh man, no, you don't owe me an apology. We actually did talk about that, and you mentioned it back then, and I wasn't able to perform, so I didn't want anybody else to lose an opportunity. But again, I'm humbled that you would even consider that, and again, man, I'm happy for the 20 years of friendship that we had, and I know it's going to continue. I know I'll be able to get back out there and help in some way, at some point in time down the road. I don't know if there's probably a slam ball court somewhere right now that you're probably about to go play around on and just relax. But again, man, I appreciate you for taking the time to do this. And I'm eternally grateful for everything you've done for me and my family. And again, I'm looking forward to the next time that we get to be together in person. So
Thank you, Dwayne. And in the meantime, I'm looking forward to seeing more of your podcast episodes. And congratulations on this.
thank you. Thank you. So,
All right.
we're going to wrap up today's episode. So, again, I want to thank my audience, everybody for listening, just taking some time out of your day to come and listen to us, share some stories from, 20, 25 years ago. But if anything you heard today you liked or you enjoyed, please give us a like, subscribe. We're everywhere that they deliver content. We're on Amazon, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere that they're delivering content. So the way we continue to grow this is by you liking, subscribing, sharing, and everything. So even if you just heard a story that you think would touch with somebody else, we ask that you share this episode with them. Or if you just know somebody who likes sports and storytelling, share it with them. If you're looking for more information, anything else about the podcast, Beyond the Game, More Stories, you can check us out online. That's www.btgms.com. On there, you can find more content, our official merchandise, everything like that. So, as I wrap up, I'm your host, Dwayne Lightfoot Jr., Mason Gordon. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And if everybody out there, remember, sometimes the game's going to end. At some point in time, you will take that jersey off for the last time, but the lessons that you learned during that career will stick with you for a lifetime. So until then, we'll see you next time, Beyond the Game.